interesting, different episode of Geek Shop. I'm Chris, and with me is
Ken.
And Derek.
an odd missing member who either slept in or hopefully nothing tragic has happened, but we'll see. Maybe he'll join us as we come in. But we were talking about we're going to continue our conversation about eras. And last time we talked about the modern era, but we stopped at the aughts. So we did up to
Yeah.
like 1999 to the year 2000. And so we were thinking about continuing. And I'll be honest, the aughts is a time where I kind of started to drop out of comic books a little. I was starting work at an animation studio then, and so animation was my thing. And I bought a few comics here and there, but most of them were animation related. And then I kind of, after I worked for the animation studio for like 5 years, and then basically started moving overseas. And my comic book buying got very different. So maybe you guys might have more experience. In the year 2000, what was the big thing? What was happening?
Marvel Knights, Joe Quesada
Yeah.
taking over Marvel. That was a big thing.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was I remember 2000, like he went from Marvel Knights to becoming Marvel editor in chief, and the first
That's
few
right.
years was like there was a few books from Marvel in that like early 2000, 2001, 2002. I was really enjoying. I'd really gotten back into Spider-Man in a big way, between the Ultimate Spider-Man and the Straczynski run of Amazing Spider-Man, which still had artwork from John Romita Jr., which like probably one of my more favorite eras. And they managed to get Grant Morrison at Marvel for a few years. I remember picking up Marvel Boy and new X-Men. So at about the mid to late 90s point, I wasn't as invested in Marvel, kind of peek in from time to time, but you couldn't really, those mid 90s, you couldn't really jump into like casually see what was going on with Marvel without getting into part 15 of a 58 part crossover. Um, but that early 2000s, like I was getting like starting to read Spider-Man consistently, like two versions, like the two different Spider-Man titles, the new X-Men, checking in with Daredevil a little more consistently. So that 2001 to 2004 mark was probably like where I was most interested, and then kind of I don't know if I like um I wouldn't say I got less interested after that, but I started realizing that Marvel was starting to like all Marvel DC, they were all starting to do a much better job of collecting the floppies into trades and hardcovers and whatnot. And I started noticing that if I started reading New Avengers in the hardcover instead of doing monthly, like I'd wait for the one hardcover, get the first year worth, and then I found that those hardcovers collected all the variant covers, and instead of like I wasn't a big variant hunter, but if the collected edition has like all of that extra stuff, and they were actually putting extras in like scripts and story ideas in the back. It was kind of like extras in a DVD play, like with DVD releases of the same decade, where you'd get all the extra behind the scenes stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. So that kind of shifted my collecting a little bit from floppies to I can trade weight a little bit, and I realize I've become a part of the problem in this day and age.
I wouldn't say it's a problem really, because I think the shift to trades is okay. I think it's still comic books. People are still making them. It's still storytelling. So I don't think it's like I know Ken, you still collect floppies, but I don't see the shift from hardcovers from floppies. The thing about the aughts though, I imagine, is that you definitely had the boom to bust, and so I imagine the readership must have been down. So it must have been a really tough time for comic makers at the time.
Yeah, but they built it back up though. I when Marvel Knights started, it was a big deal because you recruited Joe Quesada, and then you had Kevin Smith come on to write Daredevil. So I mean, that was a big part of it. And then they revived all the street level characters first. So like Spider Man, and you had Daredevil and Punisher, and there was I think was it no Black Widow. There's all these characters that revived. Even Ghost Rider got revived in the 2000s.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I guess you're working from a point of your disposition is you're way down, and then you have to rebuild everything back up because
Yeah.
if you think about the 90s when the boom happened and everyone left Marvel and then formed Image, there was a lot of bad books. Mind you, there was a few good ones, but a lot of them were really bad. The art was poor.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think the 2000s, it was like a build-up period for a lot of companies, even DC. Although I don't know if they had a fallout period like Marvel did.
But
But
DC stayed pretty, like in my opinion, DC stayed pretty consistent. They had their gimmicks, sure, but like even looking back, I could even look back that there was some story, like there was some substance behind them.
mhm.
Like they actually did try a little harder to be like, all right, Superman's dead. What's the fallout of that? And for the most part, they actually had a fallout. Uh-oh, we got someone new.
Yep, we do. There he is.
Sleepyhead is awake.
No, you know what? I forgot to set my alarm because I had to go out with friends last night and we were doing some stuff and I forgot to set my alarm.
Well, we're already recording, so now
You
you're coming
party.
in live.
Now you party too hard, Chetan. Come on.
So we've been talking
Ugh.
about the early aughts and particularly whether or not, the idea that maybe the comic books didn't have a low point, but had a rebuilding point. It was almost like a phoenix rising from the ashes, I guess.
Oh, okay.
And I mentioned that I know almost nothing about that era because that's when I sort of dropped out of buying comics regularly.
When Phoenix came back.
No, no, no. Just like the idea of like in the early aughts in the 2000 is when I
Oh, okay.
stopped buying comic books sort of regularly.
Mm.
Okay.
So
I stopped buying comics the early 2000s was when when the new 52s came out, right?
Yeah, yeah. New 52.
Early 2000s, 10s for the new 52.
See, for me, I did buy comics. I stopped buying comics for a little bit, then rebought them because as Ken, we were excited for a new 52.
Yeah, yeah. I was at the start, but
Yeah, and at the start I was excited. I bought I think like 5 titles
mhm.
and read them. They were good until DC started screwing up with the creative teams.
Yeah. Well, it's like what they did. It's almost equivalent to what they did with Marvel and the new universe. Started out good, but then you start switching around creators, and that kind of puts a dent into it for people who want to read like episodic issues monthly.
that kind of brings up the question when like the new 52 happened, because I sort of didn't really like I remember seeing it and there was a couple I picked up, but I wasn't really that into it. When you guys picked up when they reboot the universe, because both Marvel and DC sort of rebooted their universe around the same time. Um, did you guys buy comics for the creators or did you buy comics for the characters you liked and when it sort of rebooted?
Characters for me, creators that's always going to be there, but obviously if you like certain books, like everything got rebooted, like you're looking at like Firestorm, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Justice League, everything pretty much got rebooted. So it was always cool to start from scratch with those characters, at
Yeah.
least for me. You know,
Me, I think
I
it was
wasn't,
oh sorry.
sorry. I was gonna say like the new 52, I didn't really get a chance to get in on. For me, the late aughts, early tens, I kind of stopped my collecting. That wasn't out of I got tired of it. It was in the late 2000s. I had gotten married, and when I got back from my honeymoon, I found out I was getting laid off from my job.
Oh,
So that kind of forced me in a situation where like I could pick up a few books, but not too many, and then things
yes.
got to a point where I couldn't pick up. Like I was getting a little more familiar. That was on a bright note. That was where I found out that the local library for me actually had comic books you could sign out for free.
Yeah.
Um, but um, once I started, once all that kind of got settled, I went back and picked up a few hardcovers. There was like the Batman with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and I was a huge fan of Capullo. Like, um, I remember him on Quasar in the '90s when I was a kid. But then he did an X-Force run that really grew on me, and then I was ecstatic when he took over for Todd McFarlane on Spawn. Like even if the stories weren't great on Spawn, I just love that artwork. Capullo was kind of like a good mix of solid art skills and style. Like kind of had that perfect
Yeah.
mix. So of course I was stoked to see him on on Batman.
I guess the late aughts, sorry, early tens too, is when Marvel started putting on their cinematic universe and started growing that, like your Iron Man, and then eventually building up
Not
to
much
the
later,
Avengers.
wasn't it? Was
No,
not much later.
2010.
2008 was the first Iron Man.
Yeah,
Oh,
2008.
2008. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Didn't think it was that.
You
Okay.
also, if you include like Blade, which came out before
Yeah.
they started, but they were doing that in the 2000s, right? So
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Would you say that the movies affected the comic books that much? I mean, I
yes,
feel like
On the
yes,
Marvel side, yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to say on the Marvel side for sure. DC was able, in my opinion, I could be wrong. DC, I felt was a little better at being able to keep like the movies kind of separate from their animated properties, keeping separated from their comics. They were kind of a little more allowed to be their own entity. But when Marvel started getting their cinematic universe and started getting that on the roll, you could see across the board, Marvel, there was the corporate, like starting to be that corporate synergy. I think I've mentioned on Disney Plus, there was an Avengers cartoon, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Easily the best Avengers cartoon to date. A lot of heavy Jack Kirby influence in the art style. It got canceled at the end of the second season and replaced with a new Avengers show so it could line up with the aesthetic of the movies a
TV
little
show.
more.
Yes. And
So like a perfectly good Avengers cartoon got canceled and replaced with another one just for corporate synergy. Like if you actually look at that era of Marvel cartoons, there were probably about three different variations of the Guardians of the Galaxy before they got their movie.
yeah,
And anytime there was a
oh,
movie that would
yes.
come out, sometimes like the comic book or their animated property would readjust and it would create its own kind of continuity issues. I think in that era there were two different Spider-Man cartoons before Sony and Marvel worked out their deal. Um, but again, like it was a Spider-Man that got rebooted and kind of a little more aligned to the movie. Marvel's kind of stepped away from that a little bit now with X-Men '97. They kind of like, we're going to continue this, and it's not going to be tied to the movies.
yeah. I feel like
Now,
I was going to say I feel like it's because Marvel or what is it? Disney just bought Marvel, and so it was new to them.
that's what I was
Whereas
going to ask. That's what
DC
I was gonna,
had been owned by Warner Brothers for a while, so they were sort of used to the idea of running two different universes, one comic, one movie. And so I just feel like there was almost like an excitement of like, oh, now that we
yeah.
own these, let's take them over. And it's like that isn't how you should do it, because as we know, the seeds for all the great Marvel movie ideas came from comic books that happened a long time ago, not stuff that's new necessarily. So
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask, saying when did was that during the time of Disney buying Marvel, or was it, just after that, like I
The
can't
first
remember
Iron
what.
Man wasn't a Disney movie, I don't think.
No, it wasn't. Not the first Iron Man or the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
I think by the time you get to Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and maybe Iron Man 2, Marvel had just been bought by
Just bought
Disney
Disney. Okay.
Yeah. So it happened in the
and
middle of that.
just yeah, and then just started kind of getting everything going. And it actually, it's funny. I remember because again, I was reading more of the Marvel stuff at that start of the Casada era. I remember that first X-Men movie, and I remember that was also the same year that Chris Claremont was back on X-Men, and they have essentially took Claremont off that X-Men because what you had going on in the comics was such a far cry from what was going on in the movie, and the only thing you'd really be able to connect is the name. You like if you watch the movie and were reading the comics of that, like of that Claremont second run, it would have been a lot to kind of put them together. So that was where, like even back then, they were like that's where they were starting kind of the corporate synergy a little bit, even with the scattered properties. Um, and then by the time Disney took over, it just went in that direction.
So
Which
Ken,
again, for Marvel's, oh sorry,
oh no, I was gonna say, Ken, as a comic book reader, like heavy comic book reader and collector, did you get into the movies immediately, or did you sort of shy away from them?
No, movies I got into right away. I right from the get go. Like I watched Hulk, Iron Man. I saw. Yeah, I watched them all as they came out. So I was totally into them.
Well, you have to remember, I mean, up until that point with Iron Man, Marvel, and I hate to say even DC didn't really have any good movies. I mean, they were more, Hollywood just trying to do comic book movies and doing bad at it. But at that time when Iron Man came out, that was one of the few movies that did comic accurate movies.
Yeah. I mean, I'd
yeah,
say the original Superman and Blade were probably okay, but other than that,
Yeah, yes, yes.
Like Captain America, I was excited when that came out because I'm a huge Cap fan, and so when the movie came out, I took a day off work. I actually saw it opening day. I was so excited to
Oh,
see it.
same here. I mean, I saw it, but I think what you know, away from Disney and after Disney, what Kevin Feige did with the movies, he made fans interested in the movies, and it was comic accurate, to the most point. These were comic, guys who read the comic books doing the movies.
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I agree. It was kind of nice. I mean, there's a few things that were a little different to clean them up. Uh, I'd say the one that always got me was I hated the fact that Samuel Jackson never had a cigar.
Mm,
You know,
true.
that was in the comics too. Around this time is when comics really started cleaning up that stuff too. Like you started to
They
notice.
did. They did.
I think Wolverine stopped
yeah.
smoking by that point.
Yeah.
J. Jonah Jameson even stopped smoking. Yeah,
Oh, I forgot
although
about
they
that.
had
Yes, you're right.
yeah, like there was a very like that was I remember that from the Quesada era too. They started not having any of their characters smoke anymore in the comics. They still had J. Jonah Jameson smoking a cigar in the Spider-Man movies, and J.K.
Yes.
Simmons is just perfect casting for that.
Yeah. I think he was one of those guys who was in Wizard all the time. As if you could have a dream cast, it would be him. Sort of like Patrick Stewart as Professor X. It was like perfect casting right off the bat.
Hmm.
So, so when we get into, I mean, again, I sort of was backing off comic books a little bit at this point, but when Marvel was really sort of all up was their problem, and even DC, like with the Snyder universe, did you find that there was, I mean, obviously we discussed there's connection to it, but did it actually like affect the comics to the point where you're kind of like, why would I read the comic if I've seen the movie?
No, not for me.
No, no,
No,
no.
I didn't feel that way.
I
Movies and
mean,
comics were still separate.
yeah, TV shows and movies never affected me on buying comics. No.
because I also noticed, like, Derek was mentioning at the beginning of this that the trade paperback was starting to become big. And for me, actually, one of the things I started getting into was reading like the really old stuff again.
I think it helped technically say bring in new readers of people who went to see Iron Man and said, "Hey, I love this character. I want to read more things on them." And
Yeah.
hate to say it, I mean, the average person off the street is not going to buy a monthly comic that much. They don't buy a trade paperback.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and because there's like a gap between when those like the initial stories were published versus the movie. Like I think
Yeah,
even like the Winter Soldier and Civil War, those comics had been out at least 10 years before the movie, so they had like a time. But like Chris and Ken were saying earlier on, Marvel and DC weren't adapting the newest comic book stories. It was always something with at least a good 10 to 60 years, or in Captain America, Superman, or Batman's case, like 70, 80 years, whatever. So it would be easier to pull together a collection of, and that's what a collection of books to say, you're watching this movie, here's some of this. I noticed that well, Chris Chetan and I, was it last year, the world we were at Worlds Collide and we ended up going to Indigo. We found Marvel and DC had printed out some Superman magazine and a Fantastic Four magazine,
yes.
like in preparation for the movie, and it just had like a small smattering of like just a few of the stories to kind of get what the character's about and kind of get the vibe of what you're
I think
going in for when you see the
that's
movie.
it.
So I guess when we were talking about like the movies and like I can safely say that I've dropped out of a lot of the Marvel stuff, and even not as much the DC stuff because there isn't as much, but I definitely dropped out of the Snyderverse. Batman v Superman, I guess was that the last one? I don't remember. But do you guys, are you still into the TV and movies and stuff?
What, for DC or Marvel?
One then the other.
Marvel sucks. Most of it's garbage. DC, man, I'm on the side now where I can't stand James Gunn. I don't. Everything he's doing is stupid. It's all just junk. It's not acting anymore. Like, when you're seeing like Green Lantern swearing, that's where I'm out. Like, why? Why are we getting this? I'm not excited for anything that's coming out right now with DC. Just I don't know. I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed that you're trying to build a market for kids to enjoy comic books and superheroes.
I have to agree with Ken on this. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, Marvel I still have interest in because Marvel at least is trying, and Kevin Feige I think is trying. Uh, DC wise, for a visit, visit for the movies and TV shows. Um, DC wise, no. I mean, I wasn't excited in the beginning with James Gunn. Ken knows
yeah,
my
yeah,
view,
yeah, yeah.
and still not excited. Honestly, I mean, the stuff I've seen, it's just like, you know what? No, not interested. The Supergirl trailer that came out just recently,
Yeah.
don't care. I think they're trying to put Lobo in there to boost up sales. I mean, that's honestly, I think that's the only reason they have him in there. It's not
Then
an
were
entirely
you
good story.
disappointed when Green Lantern when if you saw that trailer? What that was? It's on HBO, I think, isn't
No,
it?
I
Or
mean the
coming
Green
up?
Lantern thing, I have to say, my
Terrible.
point of view on the Green Lantern trailer is, you know, and the response to it is what Grant Morrison said. If you're not going to call it Green Lanterns, why call it lanterns?
Yeah, and
If
he's
you're in,
swearing.
and what the showrunner for the show said, Damon Lindelof, I think was, you know, he thought calling it, he backtracked and said jokingly said, Green Lantern calling it green would not appeal to mass audiences and stuff like that. And Grant Morrison called him out on that. It's like, you know what? They're Green Lanterns. They're not lanterns.
Yeah. Unless you're going to start going with the other rings, colored rings, like going into that,
No, but
then
again,
maybe.
it's Green Lantern. Come on. I mean, look at my collection of all the Green Lantern books. You know, I mean, honestly, it's Green Lanterns. You know what? And I agree with Grant Morrison. You know what? It's the source material. Green Lanterns. Do it and do it
Yeah.
properly. And I hate to say it, I'm getting tired of you know, Hollywood and even James Gunn, who claims to be a comic book fan.
Yeah.
Don't do an adult version of these these characters. You know what? I want to see the fun version of it. And that's why I think with Marvel, Kevin Feige understands comics because he's read comics.
Yeah. Actually,
I
he
don't
was
feel
the
as
one that
strongly.
snuck comics to the X-Men actors for the first movie. Bryan Singer didn't want any of the actors reading the comics, but I think Kevin Feige was the assistant on that and snuck the actors the comics
Like the
to
Hugh
read.
Jackman, he's for
Yeah,
Wolverine
was it?
because he didn't know anything about Wolverine at the time. So he brought him comics to look at
That's right.
Wolverine, which is cool.
Oh, really? I
I
didn't
thought it
know
was the
that.
whole cast, but yeah,
I
See,
don't
and
feel quite
I'm
as
sure he
strong.
did the whole cast. Yeah.
but see, I didn't know that, and that's great because you know what?
No.
All of the source material. You know what? There's amazing stuff in that source material. Okay, I mean, to a certain point, yes, it's good to get an outside of thinking on this, but also the source material, if it has amazing stuff in it, I mean, come on, like even X-Men. I mean, you have what 50 years, 60 years of good stories and art. Okay, not everything's great, but you have so much to pull on.
Mhm.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and actually, if anyone's been like I've been a huge fan of the X-Men '97 stuff that came out a few years ago. New season's coming out in a few weeks, and like again, a case of the writers pulling from 60 odd years of material and kind of rearranging it and putting it together in a way that's not just like still true to the comic stuff, but not a regurgitation of the comic stuff. I was talking about the Grant Morrison run of X-Men in the early 2000s, and that show's getting a lot of the concepts and character designs from that era. And I'm like, okay, that's definitely cool. I'm definitely gonna watch that.
See, for me, my thing is like what Ken mentioned, what the movies and influencing comics and stuff. The Superman movie, yes, you could say that a new Superman that just came out. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great, but my thing was it wasn't a Superman movie. It was Superman with other characters.
I guess I didn't mind the Superman movie that much. Like I'd say I enjoyed it. I,
No,
I'm not.
it was enjoyable, but Superman was seemed like a side character.
I
Yeah.
guess so.
Somewhat. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also not looking forward to the Supergirl movie. Like, I'm also a big Lobo fan, so that's one of the reasons why. But like, I don't. It looks like John Wick a little bit. Like, you
Yes.
killed
Yeah,
my
that's what
dog.
people were saying. Yeah.
But maybe there's something interesting there. I don't hate James Gunn. I thought what he did on Guardians was great. Um,
Well,
But
Guardians
if
is
you're applying
fine.
that same formula,
Yeah. Like
That's
if you like
that's the problem.
Peacemaker,
Yeah,
yeah,
James
I
Gunn's
mean,
all right, but let's put it this way: he's a one trick pony. Everything he wants to make is Guardians over and over and over again, which is fine. But come on, like let's get some variation going here.
yeah, maybe so. I mean, I haven't been following the Marvel universe as much since the snap. That's basically when I sort of fell off of it a little bit. I saw a
Right.
few shows here and there, but so what do you guys? I mean, I think we sort of got up to the almost today from the beginning of the modern. What do you think's the future of this stuff? Like of the big companies, at least.
Hard to say. I mean, with Marvel, like with all the firings and the fact that they cleaned house with getting rid of Dan Buckley and stuff like that. I don't know. And then the people that they're putting in place there are all like on the movie side who don't know anything about comic books. So it's hard to say what's going to happen.
I think
Mhm.
for comic,
yeah,
you know what? In a way, I hate to say this. In a way, for comics, way the industry is going, North American comics, that might be a good thing. Where get an outside thinking. I'm just kind of give you an example, like Karen Berger when she came on to Vertigo and DC, she was not into comics. She was just a regular, you know, into books and other types of things. She wasn't a comic person. So when she came in, she came with an outside opinion on this industry and changed it.
Yeah.
And
And
I
I mean,
think,
I guess the question is, did DC and Marvel need changing?
oh, definitely they need a change. I agree. No, I think they do. I think they need a change because, and Ken and I've been talking about this for years now. For modern comics, when and from my point of view, when New 52 came out, I was super excited to get back into comics. And they just gave me the middle finger. Just said, hey, we don't care about you as a reader. We don't care about
Mm,
you as a fan. And honestly, my comic, I bought like I think 5 or 6 to 10, between 5 to 10 of the new 52 books, and after what 6 months, bought zero. So it dropped me as a fan because it got pissed me off, saying, you know what, why am I reading this stuff?
Well, for the first year, Chetan, but then they started screwing around with the
Oh, they start
format.
screwing her off for everything, yeah.
Yeah,
But I think,
one year was fine, but once the year was up, everything just went. You
yeah,
know,
it went downhill. And my
yeah.
thing is, with comics now, I think they need a fresh new attitude to come in and say, hey, let's rethink this. And Chris and I've talked about this many times. I think and again, they're still holding on to the monthly floppy comics. And I
Mhm.
know Ken buys them all the time, but you know what? They have to rethink that because you know what? They're still, what do you call it? Catering to the fanboys. And I hate to say it,
Mhm.
not fanboys like you can, fanboys who want the chromium covers, who want the variant covers.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't
You
go
know,
for that stuff.
and they have to get away from that because that's a bad stigma comics has. And you know,
Well, that caused the crash 30 years ago. Brian and I were talking about that at Worlds Collide. I noticed started reprinting, like Marvel started reprinting um, like their Marvel DC portion of their crossovers from the 90s. I picked up a reprint of the Spider-Man Invincible team up from the early 2000s. And the first, my thought was, it almost feels like we're heading for that same crash that happened in
that's
the
it. Yeah.
90s. Brian's thoughts were that's exactly what happened when you start seeing friendly intercompany crossovers of this magnitude. Like it is kind of preparing for a crash. I don't know how much of that is gimmicks though. Like the pandemic, I don't know what kind of consequence the pandemic had on comic collecting. So I know there were still people like still getting their files, even if they were delivered or like curb dropped off or
I think for the pandemic, I don't know if that affected comics or not, but I hate to say it, as a collector and comic reader, I'll find my ways to get my comics, you know,
yeah.
oh yeah,
that's the thing. If they're good, I'll find my way, I'll get it delivered or I'll tell the store to put it outside the door and I'll pick it up. I'll find my ways of getting it. But the problem is when the publishers don't produce good quality stuff, I don't
no, for,
care
for
if the
me
store's open or not. I'm not going in there.
for me it's the chronic reboots.
Oh yeah.
Um like that when there's even no it's not even like now there's a reboot when they change a creative team. And then somewhere along the line, if you get close to like a landmark, like I think Spider-Man's coming up to its 1,000 issue
Yes, I
legacy,
heard
but
about
they've
that.
been
Yeah.
rebooted like 5 times now.
No,
Like,
okay, I'll be honest with you. The reboots I'm not hugely concerned about. It's just, for me, it's just, have quality stuff in the reboots. That's the thing. It's like, you know what? And also, you know, when I go to the stores, it's like, they'll put out one issue, 2 issues. And I understand stores don't want to order that many copies because, stock, they don't want to hold on to old stock and stuff. But sometimes now, when you go to stores, they have so many variant covers, so many this, so many that. Now, Brian from
oh,
World's Collide is good. He doesn't order that type of stuff, you know, but most stores still.
no,
And by the time you get to the stuff, there's, what do you call it? people with the speculation attitude buying all this stuff, and you go in, you can't find the issue you want because
Yeah.
some guys bought it, put it in a bag and board, doesn't want to read it, just hopefully it'll go up in next 6 months and sell it.
I
Yeah,
think
but
this was
sorry, I was just gonna say, just to add to Chetan's point, the very the variant cover thing is the only thing that's keeping the industry going. Because, for example, I mean, I read Marvel comics, and like in the last 2 years, every series that gets relaunched is done after 8 issues. Captain America, Daredevil, it's even Iron Man. Like it's silly. Oh, we bring in a brand new writer. Like an Iron Man, for example, because I'm a huge Iron Man fan as well. They they start a series. They bring in this guy who's not even into comics. He works for some security firm in the States. Oh, he's going to write Iron Man. What, 8 issues? Gone. And it's a cycle that keeps going this way. It's like, oh, who wants to read that?
No,
So
they're catering to the speculation market, the fanboys
yeah,
are
but
going to buy
Japan,
all that stuff.
my point though is, I know what you're saying, but my point is that if if the stories themselves were good quality, then you wouldn't have to rely on
No, I
thousands of
agree. I
covers,
agree.
Like that's where the problem is.
Chris and I have had this talk with Asian and European market. You know,
Mhm.
they do. They do the. Okay, you could have a monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly comics, but do them as trade paperbacks. New stories.
And
Go
they
with
don't go out of print, and there's no sort of,
that's
there
it.
might be different covers, but like generally I find both in the European and the Asian market, like, and we've talked about this too, like getting a fifth printing isn't a big deal.
That's another one.
And
Yeah.
and it's sort of, it is more about the story than it is about the thing. The thing I was thinking about for Ken, like what you were talking about, is I almost feel like what they should be doing is having a regular series, and you can bring this whatever special writer in, but maybe do it like they stopped doing these limited series. Like those were always so fun. Like a
Yes,
Yeah,
good
they
way
like
to
the
get
were.
into a
80, yes,
character.
yes. I love the
Be
80s.
like, this is 4 issues. It's only
Yeah.
going to be 4 issues. It's its own story. It's done. It's not, it's canon, but it's not necessarily in the regular timeline. I really
Yeah,
think that they're
yeah.
missing an opportunity where they should have your Iron Man series, but then hey, we got this special writer in. He's going to do 4 issues, and sort of like British television type thing where it's done. It's
But
just
I
done.
think this is Ken and I have had this talk for a long time. I think North American Comics is still holding on to that fanboy attitude where, hate to say companies are run by fanboys and catering to fanboys. And hate to say it, it's changed so much that now you have to get in fresh new attitude into the company, fresh new faces. And if it's non-comic fans, that might be better because they might come in and say, "Hey, how's Dylan Dog in Italy selling like crazy? How's Blue Lock in Japan selling like crazy? And what's their formula? Let's try that."
Yeah.
Instead of producing Captain America every 6 months a new book, well, 40 different covers every every issue. It's like, okay, you know what? You're not gaining regular readers. Yes, the sales might be up for a while, but is that
an
really,
artificial high.
yeah, artificial? Yeah, are they true sales? You know, I think what comics and manga and European comics have fan base that read books. Like my daughter, I took her last week to a bookstore downtown, and she bought, it hurt my wallet, $330 worth of books, you know, manga books.
Yeah.
But a couple of them, I looked inside and I go, oh, second printing, third printing. She didn't care. She didn't even look at that. Where
Yeah.
comic fans, they go in, look at it, and go, "Oh, I don't want to buy second printing. I don't want to buy third printing." Manga fans don't care.
Hmm.
They just want to read the stories. They want to look at the art.
Yeah. I find there's often a correlation between the sort of silly comic book trends of like speculator boom when the collector's card market starts doing the same thing.
Yes.
So whenever you have sports cards and even comic book and art themed cards go to these stupid gimmicks, you generally find comic books are just going to jump in that circuit at the same
But
time.
comic I would say, late 80s started that. all of that crap. You know, I think I think what killed comics a lot of times was bagging and boarding, and don't read that thing, put it away. And
Yeah.
for it's like, what, and now the worst case, and Ken and I talked about, is CGC,
Oh
you know
yeah.
Slacks.
put it
Oh,
in
I think
vault, and that's it. And that's one thing. Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg, when they cracked open all those books and looked at them, I felt
Those are
great.
great,
Like,
great
you know what?
videos.
Read that comic, look at it.
Yeah.
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 And you know what? No disrespect to people who do see GC and all that stuff, but read that comic, enjoy that comic, then do that. But a lot of these guys
Yeah.
don't read this stuff.
No, they buy it and it goes right into a
Yeah.
slab right away. They won't even look at it. They just buy it.
Sorry, I'm
But
ranting on this because it's one of those things that strikes a nerve, because it's like, you know what? Look at my collection of books. I have boxes of comics here. You know what? I've read most of these. And it's like, what, enjoy it, enjoy it. Yes, if I bought, let's say, Blue Orchid, read it. And if I CGC it, I don't care at that point. you know so, but the thing is, a lot of these guys don't read this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
how many times do you have to do, when I was at the comic shop last week with my daughter, I saw like you know what's the reprint? We're reprinting all these stupid comics again.
That sort of leads me to the thing, like when you get a comic and you worry more about gimmicks than you do about story, then 10 years from now, when they're reprinting the trade paperbacks and graphic novels and omnibuses, if the story isn't there, what are they reprinting?
mm,
Yeah,
good
you're
point.
right. Yeah.
Like that's one of the things that you notice. Like, I'll be honest, there's even a couple, like, friends often gift me comic books, and sometimes they'll buy me stuff. And actually, I love it because they often buy stuff that I would never think of buying. But a few of them bought stuff that was like sort of from like 2015. And I sort of looked at it and I'm like, oh, I've never read this before. And I read it and I'm like, maybe the cover was nice.
No, but I mean, again, even in the 70s and 80s and 90s, buying comics, sometimes I bought comics for the cover and the inside was crap. I mean, it's
Yeah.
going to happen. But I think with modern comics now is like, oh, the comic I saw was Sensation Comics of Wonder Woman. They reprinted some of the books, and it had a chromium cover, $7.99 US cover price. And I'm thinking, was it $7.99 or was that Canadian? Sorry, I might be wrong. But even at that price, I'm like, who are you trying to attract on this one? I mean, are you trying to get new readers, or are you trying to get someone like me? Because someone like me is looking at the cover price and going, you know what, I'd rather buy that trade paperback of the old Wonder Woman collections.
Yeah.
It'd be
Yep.
We're actually,
cheaper,
I think
and
I
I can
got,
read all of it in one go.
I think Comixology, after my layoff and started reading comics again, a lot of the one image book I kept with from the founder set was Savage Dragon. I never dropped that book. Like during my layoff, I couldn't get it anymore. But when I got my job back and had a little bit more of that income, Comixology used to have sales on older issues, so I was able to get all the holes. But that was also in an era where if there was a Wonder Woman movie, Comixology used to put out a smatter, like a sample of Wonder Woman books for free or for 99 cents. It was just something I'd be able to just download and get started on.
Now,
Um,
here's a
but
question. You brought up something. Now, comics wise, modern age comics. Okay, I know everyone's trying to go digital and all that stuff. Do you think the digital has affected the comics market, or is the companies just producing crap?
I think there's a lot of companies that are like producing crap, like any of the Marvel and DC stuff I've been picking up lately has all been hardcovers or omnibuses of stuff I read 30 years, like as a kid, or stuff that I had shared interest, but 12-year-old me couldn't afford. But I haven't really buying any, like, I think the newest Marvel comic I've bought in the last 15 years was Spider-Man 94.
Okay.
That was J.M. DeMatteis, and that was like a continuation of the '90s cartoon. But other than that, I haven't really invested in a lot of new Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just
The
never had
Absolute
interest in
series from
jumping in.
DC has been really good.
I think Ken's
Yeah,
liking that. Yeah.
yeah, no, I like it. I've been reading it. It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
I think
It's funny because that isn't a reboot officially, but it kind of is.
I think what Derek mentioned is interesting because, and four of us are a perfect example of it. I don't think a comics price matters because, I mean, yes, cover prices do matter to a certain point, but if it's good art, good stories, you'll find a way to buy that book.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Hmm.
problem is
Sure.
it has to interest you. And for me, honestly, a lot of new stuff hasn't interested me. You know, I've been burned so many times trying new stuff that at this point I'm just like, unless, yeah, I know Ken's recommended and Chris has recommended the absolute stuff. I still haven't read any of it, yet.
Yeah, you can buy. Well, they're starting to come out in trades now. They're starting to put out trades for Batman and Superman. So you could
Yeah.
always invest in a trade and give it a try to see if you like it.
Now here's a question I just read for the absolute Batman. I read that it broke like I'm assuming it's the first issue, sold 500,000 copies.
Sorry, what was that?
Absolute Batman sold 500,000 copies.
Yeah, they say that, but I don't know. It's debatable because what sales numbers are they using?
No, and
Yeah.
one thing is, and this is where, when I used to work at the comic shop, one thing is, yes, you could sell 500,000 copies, but how many are sitting in boxes at the store? You know,
That's
you
true.
know,
That's very
that
true.
doesn't represent, how many readers are buying it. That represents how many they sold to stores or retail outlets.
Although I
Book
think
did
Absolute
well. I
Batman's
can say
selling
that
pretty well
much.
right now.
Yeah,
No, but again, is that, readership or is that, okay, the final sales that makes sense. Yes, if they sold 500,000, but they could have, like I remember when I think I told this story to Chris when Spider-Man #1 came out from McFarlane. Yes, they
hmm
sold 1 million copies, but we had like 4 boxes full of #1s.
that's right.
You
You
know,
know,
The other question is how many did issue three sell?
that's the question. Yes.
yeah, that's a good question.
I think that what comics it's between 3 to issue 8 or 9 is when they judge if the book's doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
judge it
issue
before
ones are
that.
always a tough one because there's people sampling it, there's a hype, there's whatever. But the thing about I think Absolute Batman, at least, I think it's still doing well. And I mean they did another series. So it's and obviously it's and splintered it off. So I think it's selling well enough in the later ones that even with the decline, it's doing
Still
well.
doing
So
consistent. Yeah.
Now
The
let me ask
Catwoman,
you.
Absolute Catwoman just came out this week.
Oh,
So
did
I mean,
it?
yeah.
yeah, there's already a spin-off already that just came out.
Oh
I
wow.
got it. I haven't read it yet, but yeah, that came out this week.
Okay.
Maybe the Wednesday Warrior will let us know how it was.
Maybe we'll have to see.
Maybe if we could find a Wednesday Warrior to do an episode.
I got a line on that.
Okay,
I'll bug
so
them.
question for three of you. Well, Ken's an exception because Ken will buy comics. For the other two, what would excite you to buy a new comic?
At this
Oh,
point, I buy my comics based on what my friends suggest. So to be honest, when you guys post stuff online and be like, "Oh, this is good," or this and that, that tends to be what excites me about a comic. I don't care about a gimmick. I don't care about, I might read a comic book based on like I might read Supergirl comic books because I'm going to go see the movie just to sort of be like, "Oh, where did this get inspired?" But for the most
Mhm.
part, to be honest, the thing that inspires me to actually buy and read a comic book is friends' suggestions.
yeah. I'm kind of in a weird spot myself. I'm kind of in that. I I don't want to say midlife mode, but I've been finding a lot of my comic stuff has been again reading the stuff that for whatever reason I didn't pick up my younger. Like I've been in a big Terry Moore kick, and I had a few books in college. Don't know where they are now, but they started becoming available again, or they had a Humble Bundle. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Humble Bundles at all. They're
No.
digital comics. You can They're digital comics, kind of distributed the same way you've done like TikTok Tom comics before, like just a PDF file and you can download it to the reader of your choice.
Oh,
But a
okay.
Humble Bundle will put together a collection and you can put as little as like $10, $15 towards it. But because there's a charity involved, you can go higher if you want.
Oh, okay.
So I was able to get like an entire collection of digitally of everything Terry Moore had done up to his most recent How to Draw book for something like $20. Like they're not physical copies, but $20 for like 20 like equivalent of 20 trade paperbacks. That's a pretty good price, I thought.
No, that's
Yeah.
now that brings up a question for you guys. Now I'm going to give you an example. Before first mention, I'll give you an example. Doesn't matter if it's digital or physical copies. Modern age, everyone's saying, go for digital comics and stuff. But I'll give you an example. My daughter, she wants physical copies. This is a 14-year-old. She does not want digital. And I've asked her
Yeah.
about that, and she refuses to read digital.
Right. Well,
It's a
I don't read
personal
digital either.
preference.
I don't read digital either, so
I've kind of gotten to that. I kind of wish more comics did this, but for movies, I like that you buy like a Blu-ray DVD, you could get like the digital download, so you'd have a physical copy, but then you'd also have the digital. Marvel kind of does that, but their app I find is just bloatware
mhm.
because it's like their proprietary app. But if it had like an option of getting a comic book and had a QR code to scan to again put it on a reader of your choice, I'd be I'd be cool with that.
I thought
Just
they
so I can,
tried that for a while, then they stopped. I remember we were doing that for a while, where we had the digital code when you bought the book.
I think Marvel still does, but it's again exclusive to their app, and I found that their app just seems like really bloated for me. Like it shouldn't take that long to load a comic book, in my opinion.
Yeah. I do a lot of digital only because I don't have comic book shops that sell stuff that I recognize. So I do a lot of digital
Oh no,
stuff,
no,
but
digital.
you know,
I have nothing against digital. Bottom line is the content I have issues with. You know,
yeah,
you know.
Well, I think Chris is also in a unique spot for the digital stuff, just for the frequent moving. It's
Yeah,
easier to
that's it.
pack up a
Yeah.
tablet with your library than it is to pack up your books, like your bookshelves.
yeah.
And
I
in
haven't
your
actually seen
case,
my comic books in 7 years.
Yeah.
right? And there again, there was a time there. Also, the one thing I find that's a pro about digital books is like I could catch up on my Savage Dragon, and Amazon's not going to be like, "Oh, you're buying that book? What is wrong with you?" And I have
Mm,
had that. Um, I have had that at some comic shops that I've gotten. Like I'd get the odd physical copy, like a special, like 250 or 275 or 300 issue anniversary thing. Like I'd buy a physical copy of a certain book, and I have had that experience where it's like, "Oh, you still read this?" I don't go to those stores anymore. And Brian at Worlds actually made a very big point to kind of not do that and get me back into the store, like get me back into Worlds on a regular basis.
yeah,
I
it's kind
think
of a stupid thing.
I think what comics, just last word on this talk is, I think it's not it's I think for personally with modern comics for me is it's content and the pricing that's kind of driven me away because for me, you know, what we just talked about reboots, all that stuff, having decent creative team, and also when you're charging 4.99, 5.99 for a book, that's US, and converting it to Canadian, I'm not paying that much for this. It's like
Yeah,
it's hurting my pocketbook. So unless you have good product, I'm not buying it.
Well, I think too, I remember like even now it seems even in its heyday, like in the 90s, like X-Men only had half a dozen books, but I remember the Krakoa era of X-Men books, there was something to the tune of like always 15 or 20, like some ridiculous number of those books like on the shelves. And that's kind of an impossible number to keep up on. Like we used to have like even keeping up with I talked about a few times my Spectacular Spider-Man omnibus, the DeMatteis Buscema run, and after a certain point, it starts getting into those crossovers of the era. But this particular book, all the parts that weren't DeMatteis or Buscema, there was a chapter break, so you weren't even getting the full crossover. But thinking about back in that area, you had to keep up with 4 or 5 monthly books to get what was going on. That's
And
like a book
that's
a week,
and I think that's what killed a lot of the market because
and that's happening again.
yeah, I mean, I mentioned this before. I bought Jeff Johns's and Ivan Reese's Aquaman series, and I thought it was great. Then all of a sudden they do a crossover, and you have to buy
Yeah,
the crossover to understand the next three books. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know what? I dropped it at that point. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. You know what? Enough of this crap.
Yeah.
that got Peter David to quit a lot of those books in that era. Like anytime, like his book would have a crossover, and those crossovers would happen every year. Like he'd have to shelve
Yeah.
like plot points, and that like, and it's a frustration for the creator.
Oh, it is. And a lot
Well,
of creators have quit because of those reasons. And it's like, you know what? Comics have not learned from this. And, it's, you know, and I don't know if it's happening in the modern age, but I mean, it's enough to piss me off. And, for me, like I said, Aquaman, you know, I was interested in it. I bought what, 12 issues. Then they started doing that. And it's just like, did not buy an issue afterwards.
no,
I
I
think we can
almost
wrap
wonder.
I think we should think about wrapping this up because we're running out of time. But I think the thing that we can all agree on is we need a new golden age.
I think so. I think so. Yes.